As many of you probably already know, inflation has been rising. However, there is considerable debate on why this is and what to do with it. In this video, I shall explain how supply and demand plays a major role in inflation and try to determine the best policy proposal to fight inflation. So, let's first talk about how we got into this kerfuffle. As many of you probably know, the pandemic had caused aggregate demand to fall drastically, and during such periods, as Keynesian economics dictates, the government has to step in and prop up demand. Therefore, the US and other advanced economies launched a two-prong attack to shore up demand. The government began to borrow excessively to fund programs to prop up large and small businesses. It also launched stimulus packages that directly provided cash into the hands of people. All of this propped up demand quite a lot. However, we did not see this demand until recently, mainly because people were saving this demand due to a few reasons. First of all, people were scared. They were facing uncertain times and did not want to spend this money. The second reason was that people did not have many avenues to spend this money and therefore demand stayed clogged. However, as cases began reducing and vaccination picked up pace, consumer confidence began to rise and therefore the clogged up demand suddenly was let loose. However, this was not anticipated well by companies, and even those that anticipated this demand could not boost production fast enough to keep up with demand. All of this caused prices to rise in specific parts of the economy, and these few sectors that experienced massive inflation caused overall inflation to rise. Now, there are a few myths that I want to bust in this video. First of all, there are people who say that inflation is only in a few sectors of the economy and therefore we have nothing to worry about. This is completely wrong, as the inflation in a few sectors simply represents consumer choice and specific supply chain bottlenecks. The main cause of this inflation is due to too much demand and too little supply in the economy. Frankly, it does not matter which goods experience price increases. The second myth is more dangerous as it relates to an attack on activist monetary and fiscal policy. Advocates of this theory mainly want an end to big government spending during recessions. They are oblivious to the fact that if this were done during 2020, then we would probably currently be in a recession worse than the Great Depression. Just because something has a few negatives does not mean we must abandon it. We simply need to learn from our mistakes and not repeat them. The third myth is that the government should not rack up debt because at any time the interest rates on these debts could simply rise, suffocating the government's budget. However, government's interest rates on debt already issued don't just simply rise. The US government issues treasury bonds to offset budget deficits. These treasury bonds have a fixed exchange rate that does not change. Therefore, even if interest rates on new treasury bonds were to rise from 2% to 10%, the treasury bonds already issued at 2% will continue paying out 2% interest rate. While a rise in interest rates could severely affect the ability of the government to run deficits, as this shall reduce demand for government bonds, it will not bankrupt the country due to unpayable interest payments. Now, what can we do about inflation? Well, for starters, we could slowly, and I emphasize slowly, reduce government deficits and quantitative easing. We should not reduce unemployment benefits and other pro-worker programs as this shall reduce the bargaining power of employees even further, something which the US does not need, especially after 40 years of neoliberal policies. I also propose a variable excise and consumption tax that taxes goods that experience inflation in the double digits, since if companies cannot increase production, it is the government's duty to reduce demand to stabilize prices. To prevent this statement from being taken out of context, I would like to clarify that it is the government's duty to stabilize prices only when it is the cause of the increased demand. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching and see you next video.